Hello everyone, I'm Tiffany and today I'll be discussing my masculinity interview. So today I wanted to talk about Kai Wen-hu, the person I chose to interview. He is my boyfriend and is an alumni of UMD who also majored in psychology. Regarding his identity, he identifies as a heterosexual 23-year-old Chinese-American cis man who is agnostic and likes the pronoun him specifically. So what is intersectionality? I explained intersectionality in a simpler way. I said that intersectionality is the relationship between your many identities and how they interact or intersect. This also regards the overlapping of discrimination and privileges that occurs from said identities. Intersectionality means added on predispositions that are put onto someone based on their multiple identities. So I asked him which aspects of your identity have been most influential or important to your relationship with masculinity and why. Kai's identity as an American has influenced him and his relationship with masculinity. Being Chinese American, the form of masculinity he was raised with never really clicked with the same culture in the US. So throughout his young adolescence, 11 through 14, Kai struggled a lot with fitting in with many boys his age and ended up hanging out with girls most of the time. In a way, Kai said that he rejected his masculinity until closer to high school when he finally got his growth spurt. Because he never connected with that side of himself and Kai's parents never pushed him towards those masculine norms, he found himself drawn to it, moving out of high school and transitioning into undergrad. Because he did his due diligence and research independently when he was older, Kai knew what toxic characteristics to leave out and what positive ones to implement into his life. I also asked him, what does the phrase man up mean to him? He described it as stepping up and doing the right thing, most of the time the responsible thing. It means to take charge, show no fear, and tackle whatever is in front of you head on. Throughout his life, when he heard the phrase, it was usually when faced with a difficult situation, either physically or mentally, and it was blamed that additional courage was needed. This term may bring about some negative feelings or outcomes in men because there is almost a connotation that weakness or fear is unacceptable. He thinks we shouldn't eliminate this phrase, but the context in these scenarios is crucial to evaluate its necessity. Our interpretation of the phrase was about the same as it was to grow up, gain some courage, and take charge of the situation. Tying it back to course concepts, it connects to the masculine norms we learned about, such as emotional control, risk-taking, and dominance. Men are encouraged not to show fear as it's a sign of weakness, or according to the hegemonic ideals, they're supposed to be stoic and prideful. It shows the masculine norm of risk-taking as they are pushed to step up in a difficult situation, even when they might not know what to do, and they're expected to take charge and do the right thing regardless. Their dominance shows when they show signs of leadership, taking control of the situation and asserting themselves. In a way, man up is a way for them to gain respect by showing people how masculine they can be. So I found an article of Messler et al. Study that was conducted in 2021. This study found that masculine gender role discrepancy, or MGRD, positively predicts healthy behaviors. MGRD negatively predicts unhealthy health-related behaviors. Discrepancy stress mediates the relationship between MGRD and health-related behavior, which includes proactive health and safety measures, engaging in healthy social relationships, and engaging in healthy stress management practices. They also found that higher discrepancy stress resulted in fewer positive health-related behaviors. Traditional masculinity ideology moderates this indirect effect. Discrepancy stress positively mediate, mediated the relationship between MGRD and harmful mental health outcomes, wherein higher discrepancy stress resulted in more negative mental health experiences. The study findings inspired me to look into healthy social relationships and engaging in healthy stress management practices, leading me to my next question. How does masculinity affect how you manage your relationship stress? Kai mentioned that how his masculinity to a degree hinders how he manages his relationship stress, whether this be from gender roles keeping men in a bubble of toughness, where one must constantly push down their feelings, for example, insecurity, fear, jealousy, regret, and etc. Over time, he mentions that his ability to deal with this stress has improved, and he has now learned to appreciate one's ability to share how one feels with others. Masculine norms teach men to keep feelings of inadequacy, and fear under wraps and away from the public eye, leading many to start harboring symptoms of anxiety and depression. Still, at the same time, they're taught to ignore these same feelings. However, it also has taught him positive ways of dealing with stress, for example, exercise and doing things that he enjoys, and many more. He keeps in mind the lack of reason for that added on stress to begin with if it were not for the toxic masculinity mindsets in place. This ties back to Messler's finding that higher discrepancy stress resulted in fewer positive health-related behaviors. He mentions that the pressure from these gender roles leads him to hide his emotions and have adverse mental health like insecurity, fear, jealousy, anxiety, depression, and stress. In addition, I asked him, do you think one can show a healthy amount of masculinity in their relationships based on societal norms? Why or why not? Kai thinks that there are ways to do this, however, a balance is necessary. A balance is what leads to the healthiest outcomes. Similar to food, if you overindulge, or if there isn't enough of a particular activity or nutrient, again, there are bound to be adverse outcomes. The definition of healthy is determined by how you approach the concept. He said, if you constantly allow societal masculine norms to make your decisions for you, it can irritate others and yourself too. If masculinity hinders your connection with those you love, performing a hard-headed overcorrection would lead to other issues. It's all about finding the right balance between understanding your values and not letting them overshadow your growth as a human being. This ties to the concept of positive masculinity. As we learned in class, the emphasis on adaptive character strengths, emotions, and virtues of men that promote resiliency and well-being and empower men to improve upon themselves and society. As he stated, building upon the traits of masculinity improves their image, well-being, and growth as human beings, as well as breaking down toxic masculinity and societal norms. So overall, my interview experience, I thought it was very interesting to understand his perspective instead of basing it on assumptions. At the end of the interview, I asked him if he thought if the interview was a bit therapeutic for him, just because these are some things I barely ever get to hear him talk about or mention. He said that it was kind of therapeutic for him getting to share his feelings without judgment, and it was very interesting because these were in-depth conversations that we might not get to consciously think about or talk about in our daily life topics. And being able to understand his growth, his feelings, can further improve our relationship growth. My one takeaway from intersectionality from this interview is, as a POC or person of color, I can relate to how our home or ethnic culture impacts our experiences growing up compared to two different standards and societal norms, being raised in Western and Eastern cultures. Having to juggle both cultures can be difficult as a growing teenager, having to deal with their immigrant parents and their culture and the culture that they're raised in school with their friends. It was interesting to see how other Asian Americans might interpret intersectionality in their life experiences and how it has impacted their identity. Or in this case, it was very interesting how his ethnicity and heritage impacted his masculinity. As we discussed in class, Asian American men are held to different standards and stereotypes as their internalized attitudes affect their image. And these are my citations. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation. Please feel free to let me know if you have any questions as well. Thank you.